New for F1 this year is budget caps, an American team owned by a Russian, the return of Aston Martin, someone leading the championship other than Mercedes, and of course a new iteration of Codemasters F1. This is Codemasters' 12th year with the title that I'll admit I've been a yearly consumer of, and their first under the parent company EA. The big addition for this year, outside of the PS5 Series X jump, is the new story-driven Breaking Point story mode. I'm Jake from B2D Gaming. Let's talk about it. Breaking Point is a short 6 to 8 hour story mode with beautiful cinematics that serves as an introduction to Formula One for any new player. For veteran players of the game, it serves as a new game mode to experience that delves a little deeper into the world of Formula One politics than we've gotten in previous years, by just picking a team and hoping we do well. For fans of the real-life sport, it's, well, kinda dull. Breaking Point puts you in the role of rookie driver Aiden Jackson, a British-born 19-year-old future F1 superstar. You start your career at Abu Dhabi in the last race of the F2 season with the task of winning the race in the F2 Championship. You select one of 5 F1 teams for your future career, which determines your dream goal based on the engine supplier. The 5 teams available this year are Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, which was Racing Point, Haas, and Williams. Pick one of the Ferrari-supplied teams like Alfa Romeo or Haas, and your story revolves around Aiden's dream of driving for Ferrari. Picking Williams or Aston Martin, and you'll be gunning to replicate Lewis Hamilton's success in a Mercedes. Pick the sole other team with the Honda engine in AlphaTauri, and you'll be looking to have Dr. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner push you into the Red Bull seat. But any story that's good has a bit of drama. In Breaking Point, that drama comes from 2 places. Your 39-year-old Dutch seasoned veteran of a teammate Casper Ackerman, and the 27-year-old, very punchable British rival, Devin Butler, making his return from F1 2019. Breaking Point handles the story's cinematics well, with highly detailed paddock and back-office cutscenes, as well as scripted events that happen on track and between racing. If you're wondering if you have to complete the story 3 times to see the 3 different endings based on your dream team, don't worry. The cinematics are all exactly the same. The only key difference is the racing suit everyone is wearing. Any mention of Ferrari, Mercedes, or Red Bull and their team principals is always done when the character is facing away or has somebody walking in front of them. They never have to animate different names and can use the same cutscenes over and over. The only unique cutscene is at the very end of the story with a different team principal for your final scene, be it Mattia Binotto, Total Wolff, or Christian Horner. The journey to that final scene puts you in the shoes of a young up-and-comer, which after winning the Formula 2 championship, you're thrust into the 2020 season at your selected team. The 2020 liveries and drivers are all in full effect, so if like me you selected Aston Martin, you'll spend your first season in a bright pink Racing Point car. In that first season, you're introduced to your seasoned teammate, but given no backstory about him. All you know is he's a veteran of Formula One, but you don't know if he was the Hulkenberg of F1 with not even a podium to his name, or an F1 champion winding down his career at a team not expected to be competing for championships, a la Kimi Räikkönen. It's this lack of character development that makes it difficult to get too invested in the story. On the plus side, it does serve as a basic introduction to Formula One. After claiming your Formula 2 championship, your first foray into Formula One is in a press conference in your brand new digs alongside Esteban Ocon and Lando Norris, even though they remain silent for the whole thing. You're then put into your first race in F1 and you'll find yourself in the Australian Grand Prix with an objective of catching your senior teammate within 5 laps. Upon doing so, you're met with the first on-track action and cutscene, and has your rival Devin Butler come up to squeeze you 3 wide into turn 11, causing you to crash into your teammate, starting the inter-team drama. After a well-done cutscene, finishing the race, and after race drama, you're inside of your trailer with generic emails and social media messages that try to flesh out the story. The problem is the story never really takes off because they do little to invest you in it. Right after that drama in Australia, instead of developing it further, it throws you right into the Chinese Grand Prix a month later with a throwaway message on the loading screen of, "The world of motorsport moves fast with the focus quickly shifting to the Chinese Grand Prix." Then when you start the Chinese Grand Prix, it starts with a cutscene of your teammate bumping you off the track. What I found and highly suggest is if you have any experience at all with F1 games or any success in racing games in general, do yourself a favor and bump the difficulty up from normal to hard before you ruin the narrative. In the first race where I was expected to recover after the crash and just finish the race, I put it on the podium. In China, you're expected to recover from the bump off the track and get at least 10th to score a single point for the team, and I ended up winning the race. However, all of the cutscenes and talks still center around your objective, so there's a lot of "Oh, you cost the team points today, even though I brought home 26 and you just can't get any more than that." Throwaway comments from trackside pundits like Will Buxton mention that you recover okay, but the team is suffering from your rivalry. Or it didn't go quite how you wanted it to, regardless of your finishing position. After China, you meet with your teammate and try to talk about what happened, only to get met with a cold shoulder. Luckily, villain extraordinaire Devin Butler chimes in, sounding awfully close to Jensen Button.
Mom, cancel the TV subscription. The entertainment is right here.
Oh, come off it. Do you really have nothing better to do?
Right now? No. And why would I want to miss this? You two are like characters in a badly written sitcom.
To stir the pot even more about how Casper wanted the team to sign Daniel Ricciardo instead of you, and he pushed the team to do so. Devin then gives you the helpful tip to prove him wrong. The game skips 5 races ahead to France, where you're tasked with your first full race around France. You're given the mission to topple Renault and McLaren, but with the normal difficulty after 13 laps, ended up 1 minute and 15 seconds ahead of second place. But the preset voiceover work can only talk about how Racing Point should be in the midfield battle more often because they're just as good, making no mention of the win. You do get headlines on the TV, calls on your phone, emails from the team and media, and social media tweets to flesh out the story a little bit more. But at no point are you able to see championship standings, how you or the team are doing, even though they could fabricate numbers with all the skipped races to give a little more attention to them. What it does do well, however, is introduce you to the faults and failures in F1. At several points throughout the story, including the very next race at Silverstone, you start with a punctured tire, you have to nurse back to the pits, get a tire change, and resume racing while trying to regain position. You have a race with a busted gearbox that cannot grab 6th gear. You have wing failure that does not allow you to deploy DRS. These races with faults are a great introduction to all the things that can go wrong in a race outside of colliding with another car, and they give you a good feel for what you can expect the car to feel like when that does happen. These were probably my favorite races, even though they have no scripted cutscenes about drama and are purely about racing through an issue. After another race in Italy and Mexico, you end the season in the boss's office getting a talking to about your behavior and how the season was affected because of it.
What the hell was going on out there? We've invested millions in you two. Millions. And look at you both. Acting like a couple of school kids. You've got a lot to prove this year, boy. And you're swanning around like butter wouldn't melt. And as for you, you should know better. I'm disgusted.
After that cutscene, you notice that you're in the same racing room, but you got the all-new Aston Martin digs and a noticeably different helmet. This helmet change is due to the focal shift of the story, now putting you in the Alpine Stars racing shoes of the veteran driver Casper. Your first race in Australia is plagued by the aforementioned gearbox issue, which made for one of the most memorable races for me. After that, it's off to Bahrain, where you lose priority on pitting to your young teammate and double stack a stop, causing you to fall back a few spots. After that, it's the Netherlands, Canada, Austria, and Belgium, with Belgium introducing you to typical Belgium weather and your first laps on the intermediate wet tires. After Belgium, you race at Russia, Japan, the US, and end your storied career in Abu Dhabi. In this run of races, I experienced my first and only bug with the Breaking Point story mode during an after-race interview where my driver suddenly became mute and had an intense staring contest with the reporter asking the questions.
Great work out there today. Let's have your thoughts.
A podium finish today, Casper. You must be happy with that, surely.
Outside of this, it was a smooth experience, which hasn't been reflected in my team career, but that's for another video. During that same run, you also have a team dinner where 2 years of conflict is resolved in a simple conversation that for some reason never happened before. I'm pretty sure Lawrence Stroll would have fired the boss day one at Racing Point or at Aston Martin if this had happened. This leaves the last few races to be strictly against Devin Butler instead of each other as teammates. You have a heartfelt chat with your spouse about wanting to leave the legacy in Formula One and help your teammate get his dream seat. You have a touching cutscene where you share your setup with a struggling Aiden Jackson to help him along in the race. The finale sees you driving as Casper Ackerman in Abu Dhabi and taking Devin Butler out of the race after he attempts an overly aggressive move. The focus shifts back to Aiden with the objective of finishing on the podium and securing 4th in the Constructors' Championship for your team now that your rival has crashed out. After a successful finale at Abu Dhabi, you have a scene in the cool-down room with Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen in which Casper comes in to say congratulations and goodbye. You drag him up onto the podium with you for a final goodbye to the sport he's devoted half his life to, and you get your final nod from your Dream Team principal. Overall, it adds an interesting hook to get new people interested and introduced into Formula One. On the downside, it also has one of the weakest stories that could have been written and supported in Formula One. Looking at just the current field of drivers, you have a plethora of interesting and far more engaging stories that you could have based the story mode on. For instance, you have Max Verstappen, son of Jos Verstappen, an F1 driver who raced in F1 and was technically the most successful Dutch driver before his son found success in the Red Bull. He leaves F1 to begin coaching his son, who goes on to become the youngest ever winner of an F1 race, secures a seat in a senior team at 18 years old, and takes his first Grand Prix victory. That same Max is now fighting against statistically the most successful F1 driver in history for his first world championship as the #1 driver for a senior team at only 23 years old. A story where your father had success in racing, coached you all your life, and the pressure of you being the son of that, entering a top team at such a young age, unproven, with your father's shadow over you, and then being put against the best could be a gripping story. Additionally, Lewis Hamilton, a kid facing diversity and racism issues throughout his career, becoming the first black driver in Formula One and missing out on his first world championship in his maiden season, partnering with the defending two-time world champion as a teammate by only 1 point. Or you got the Manganese driver, Charles Leclair, losing his godfather Jules Bianchi, who was in F1, to an accident, and then following in his footsteps, hoping for a Ferrari seat. And then, on your way up to Formula One, only to lose your father and having to race that same weekend, and then you win the feature race in Formula 2 in Baku. You hold composure the whole time, just a couple days after losing your father. Right before you lose your father, he tells him he had signed the Formula One team, and his father passed believing that his son had made it. What neither of them knew at that time is he would go on to win Formula 2 that year for Prima, sign with Alfa Romeo, and then only in his second season sign one of the longest contracts as one of the youngest drivers for Ferrari. And these are just small examples of great stories in F1. Sainz, Vettel, Ocon, Schumacher, they all have interesting stories from their Formula One career, and as an avid fan, I know the potential and power of a story. With the over-the-top action and drama of F1, with shows like Drive to Survive on Netflix bringing a lot of new fans to F1, I even saw that this year's opening Grand Prix had 99% more viewership than any year prior. This was a great chance to introduce an F1 game to an all-new audience just getting into F1. This mode will be an okay introduction point for them. Unfortunately, it doesn't hold a candle to the story that could have been. We could have even used something like Days of Thunder style story. Breaking Point stopped short of the mark for me, and what is an otherwise outstanding game from a well-done franchise. While I played through it and thought the cutscenes were well done, the story needs a lot of work to be memorable. Next year, I hope they can work in a better written and more engaging story. It could be tied to the new F1 regulations coming for next year that should change racing on the grid, whether it be focused on a superstar struggling to make the new format work, or a meteoric rise from a newcomer finally given a chance to compete under the new regs. I look forward to the future entries in the series and hope they continue to include this mode in the future. Thanks for watching.